morning everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. So this is actually the second time that I am going to be filming this video because I was trying to film it yesterday and I just could not get my words out, and then when I was editing it, it just looked really choppy. So anyway, let's hope that it goes a little bit smoother today. So today we are going to be talking all about coffee, and no, this isn't what you think it is. I've actually switched to a herbal coffee which is completely caffeine free, and I'll give you the reasons a little bit later in the video. But I have mentioned coffee and caffeine a few times in some of my more recent videos, especially in the one where I talked about the 5 different foods that you should be giving up if you're somebody who is suffering from an inflammatory skin condition. So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into this subject and really kind of go into how caffeine affects our brains, our bodies, our skin. Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? Do we really need to give it up? All of this is coming up in this video. But before we get started, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button. If you like videos about skin, hair, or health, I highly suggest you subscribe. I make new videos every single week. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about how caffeine or coffee affects our brains and our bodies. So I am going to be using the words caffeine and coffee kind of interchangeably because the active ingredient in coffee is of course caffeine. So the main effect that caffeine has in the brain is that it blocks something called adenosine. So adenosine is something that makes us feel tired, it makes us feel drowsy. It's a completely natural neurotransmitter, and it kind of goes up and down at different levels throughout the day. So in the mornings, it takes a little while for adenosine to kind of taper off, which is why it does take a little while for us to sort of feel energized and feel a bit more awake in the morning. So essentially what caffeine does is that it blocks adenosine in the brain and makes us feel more alert, makes us feel more awake, and gives us a little boost of energy. On top of this, it also affects dopamine and glutamine, both of which have to do with mood. So it elevates your mood a little bit, gives you a little bit of a kick in the morning. And finally what it does is stimulates our adrenal glands to produce adrenaline, which eventually leads to raised cortisol. So these are the kind of main effects in our brains. It's very psychoactive, it makes us feel alert, makes us feel awake, it makes us feel very focused. So on top of what it does in the brain, it has a very stimulating effect on lots of different processes throughout the body. So some examples of these is that it raises oxygen levels in our blood, it increases water absorption both in our kidneys, in our bowels, and it also stimulates kind of bowel movements, which is why, yes, you will need to go to the loo, both number 1 and number 2, when you have a cup of coffee in the morning. And generally, it just has a very stimulating effect kind of all over. So now let's talk a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to caffeine. So some of the positive side effects that people have noted with caffeine is that, like I mentioned earlier, it improves mood, so it can help people with sort of depression and kind of low mood disorders. It also helps people to improve their memories. So there are some studies that have shown that people will remember things better over a 24-hour period if they have some caffeine than if they don't. And of course, like I mentioned, it gives us a boost of energy, which can be very good if you are having some caffeine before you are working out. It kind of helps you to get that last set in before the end of your workout. If you're also consuming caffeine in the form of tea or coffee, both of these have a lot of antioxidants in them, which contain a lot of very protective elements for your health, particularly in the form of protection from cardiovascular disease and also neurodegenerative disorders. So this all sounds great, but before you switch off here, let's talk a little bit about some of the harmful and kind of the more negative effects that coffee can have. So I think the main thing is that what happens is, because caffeine blocks these adenosine receptors, over time your brain will start to adapt and compensate by producing more of these receptors in your brain. So that means you will need more caffeine in order to have the same effect as you did when you first started your coffee habit. And over time, also what this will mean is that you will feel more tired when you don't have your coffee. So this is how you create a dependency on caffeine, and this is why a lot of people feel like they really need that cup of coffee in the morning. Speaking of, cheers. So some of the other effects that people can feel when they are drinking coffee and caffeine, and some of these effects definitely apply to me, is that you do feel a little bit stressed. Like I mentioned, it does raise cortisol in your body, as well as exacerbating kind of feelings of anxiousness or feelings of anxiety, if that is something that you are prone to as well. So I definitely have had this. It's not been super bad, but definitely when I have a big strong cup of coffee, I do feel a bit jittery and I do feel a little bit anxious, but not really about anything in particular. That will 100% be effect of the caffeine. If you overdo it on caffeine, and the safe limit is 400 milligrams a day, which is about 4 cups of coffee, you can start to feel really anxious, you can start to hallucinate, you can start to feel nauseous, you can start to vomit. Like, it is a poison at the end of the day if you have too much of it. But I think the main thing that more people are going to be affected by is the withdrawal symptoms of when you don't have the caffeine after you have a caffeine habit. So one of the main things that you can expect if you have decided, right, I'm going to give up caffeine, or if I'm going to cut down on it, is that you're very, very likely to get headaches. So why does this happen? This is because caffeine is vasoconstricting in the brain, meaning it constricts blood vessels when you drink it. So what then happens if you don't have that caffeine? Your blood vessels will open up, there'll be more blood flow to your head, and that is how you get those kind of pounding caffeine headaches. On top of this, if you are not replenishing with water, you can become dehydrated because, like I said, it does increase water absorption. But I think the main thing and the main drawbacks about coffee is that it will impact your sleep, and not only your ability to fall asleep, but also the quality of your sleep. The reason being is because caffeine has a very long half-life of 5 hours, meaning this is the amount of time that it takes for half of the amount of coffee that you consume to be cleared from your body. So double that. That is how long it takes for all of that to be cleared. So if you're drinking at 2 p.m. a cup of coffee, it will take you 10 hours for all of that caffeine to be completely eliminated from your body. So if you're drinking several cups a day, it is very likely that this will have an accumulating effect. And yes, you will definitely feel it after a while when you are trying to fall asleep. Other effects that I found really interesting and I didn't know about was that it can affect your fertility, both as a man and as a woman. And it can affect your baby if you are breastfeeding. So that is why doctors recommend to cut down on your coffee or your caffeine if you are trying to get pregnant, you're pregnant, or if you are breastfeeding. So finally, let's have a little look at the kind of area of interest for me, which is how it affects your skin. So it's definitely not black and white. It's not definitely bad for your skin, and it's definitely not super good for your skin. It has different effects depending on how you consume it or how you use it. So I think the main thing is that, like I mentioned before, there are sort of 3 main effects that coffee will have on your skin if you're somebody who's suffering from an inflammatory skin condition. So first of all, it affects your sleep, and sleep is super important for natural healing mechanisms. Number 2 is that it does dehydrate you, and especially if you're someone with eczema or psoriasis, you have a dry skin condition. So that's definitely not going to be very helpful, again, if you are trying to heal or manage your condition naturally. Finally, what it does, like I mentioned, it does raise cortisol, which is your stress hormone. And yes, stress really does impact your skin. It's probably one of the biggest exacerbators for inflammation in your skin. So this is something that we really want to be cutting back on as much as possible. However, there are also some positive effects of caffeine, especially if you are using it topically in the form of creams or ointments. So like I mentioned before, caffeine is a vasoconstrictor, meaning it constricts blood vessels. So if you're applying this topically, it can actually help to reduce some of the redness and some of the puffiness that you feel at the surface of your skin. This has been shown to be especially good for people with rosacea. It has also been shown to improve circulation as well as reduce cellulite. So these are all definitely positive effects if these are any concerns for you. It's just about how you are using it and the amount that you're using, and whether you're consuming it or whether you're applying it topically. So in conclusion, do we really need to give up coffee? So I would still say, even after all the research that I've done this week, that yes, if you're somebody who is going through inflammatory skin conditions such as eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, or acne, giving up your coffee is going to be good for you. And the reason being is just because the caffeine hit in coffee is so strong. On top of that, it is going to be, like I mentioned, it's a diuretic, will dehydrate your skin, increase the stress levels, it impacts your sleep, and of course it is very acidic. Now, if you're somebody who feels like you really need the caffeine, I would recommend switching to tea for the time being. Now, is caffeine or coffee bad for us overall? The jury is out. The thing about caffeine is that it affects different people so differently. And it will depend on things like your genetics, it will depend on your height and weight, your gender, your diet, your lifestyle. So many different things impact the way that caffeine is processed in your body. So it's very difficult to say to a person who feels like it really doesn't have an impact on them and that they sleep fine, that you should definitely give up coffee. But I know that I personally do feel better when I don't have coffee day to day. But this is definitely not something that you have to give up for, you know, the rest of your life if you really, really love your coffee. And believe me, I get it. I actually love coffee as well. But if you want to give it up, there are so many really great alternatives out there for you. So like I showed you in the beginning of the video, I've got the herbal coffee here, which is completely caffeine free, and it tastes very, very similar to coffee. So it kind of provides you with the sort of the ritual element of drinking a cup of coffee in the morning without actually being coffee. You can also have things like herbal teas. So I drink a cup of green tea every single morning, and yes, that does have a little bit of caffeine in it, but it's much, much less than a cup of coffee or even black tea. Other things, of course, you can just go and order a decaf. So you can still go and enjoy your lattes and your cappuccinos, but just ask for the decaf option. And again, yes, there will be a small amount of caffeine in that, but I mean, I think it's pretty negligible. So that was it. Gosh, okay, that went a lot smoother than yesterday's filming. I hope you found that interesting. I found it really, really interesting. And let me know what you guys think about caffeine and coffee. Do you guys drink coffee? How does it impact your skin? Is this something that you've thought about giving up? Is this something that you've already given up? Tell me all about it. I'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, please do like, please subscribe, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Bye.